Welcome to your next great novel. I'm your host, Phil Williams, and I'm here with my lovely co-host, Denise Williams. How are you doing, Denise?
Very well, thank you.
Today, we have a very special episode of our little book club. We're going to talk about our top 10 fiction books of all time. Now, I'm a sucker for top 10 lists, so here we go. Denise, do you want to start with number 10? On your list, that is.
Sure. My number 10 is Styx by Diane Alber. It is a picture book about a popsicle that accidentally melts and becomes just a plain stick. He has a hard time adjusting to his new normal, but with the help of some new friends, who also happen to be sticks, he realizes that everything happens for a reason and that melting was just part of his journey. This book was released this year, and I'm a big fan of picture books. I loved them as a child and fell in love with them again in the 90s when I first became a teacher and realized how much kids love read-alouds. I also realized how important it is to promote a love of reading and exposure to literature. I love the creative plot that the popsicle melts and then is so disappointed and distraught with the situation. It is fabulous how the popsicle takes quite some time to be accepting of his new normal, and it's a wonderful life lesson, not only for kids, but for adults as well.
Yeah, I like that book. Denise shared it with me, and I did read it, and it's the idea of being adaptable to change, right?
Right. I think I read it aloud to you in the kitchen,
yes.
I believe. Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly right, but it's a cute book. So my number 10 is, and we might have a few books that overlap. So the way we're going to handle that is the first person that talks about a book that overlaps, they'll probably give a little bit more detail. And then if we run into that again a second time, then the other person will just give a shorter synopsis or a shorter description of why they like the book. But my number 10 is Mrs. Fletcher by Tom Perrotta. And Mrs. Fletcher is the story of a 46-year-old divorcee and single mother by the name of Eve Fletcher. In the beginning, her only child is Brendan, and he's off to college. Before he leaves, Eve hears something very disturbing transpire between Brendan and his girlfriend. I won't say what it was, but I will say that Brendan treated his girlfriend like a sexual object, not a person that he actually cares about. So after her son leaves for college, Eve receives an anonymous text that says, "You are my MILF." Over the months that follow, Eve obsesses over the message, and this sparks an interest in a porn website that features the erotic exploits of ordinary middle-aged women like herself. At the same time, Eve is leading her straight-laced life, serving as an executive director of the local senior center and taking a community college course on gender and society. Before long, Eve's online fixations begin to spill over into real life, revealing her new romantic possibilities that threaten to upend her quiet suburban existence. Meanwhile, miles away at the state college, Eve's son Brendan, who's kind of like this jock and aspiring frat boy, discovers that his new campus isn't nearly as welcoming to his hard partying lifestyle as he had imagined. Only a few weeks into his freshman year, Brendan is, I would say, he's definitely struggling in a college environment that shames him for his outmoded chauvinistic ideas of sex. As the New England autumns turn to winter, both the mother and son find themselves enmeshed in morally fraught situations that come to a head on one fateful November night. So Mrs. Fletcher, I think, is a very funny book, but there's also a lot of depth. I love the way Tom Perrotta criticizes suburbia. He does a great job of creating characters that feel very real to me. As much as I hated Brendan, I actually knew guys exactly like this guy. Anyway, I very much enjoyed this book, but I will warn the listeners, do not expect a perfect ending wrapped up in a neat bow. Tom Perrotta doesn't give you that, but he does give you something to think about.
I read the book as well and thought it was very good, and I'd have to agree that he does. His characterization is fantastic. You really feel like you're there and that you could actually reach out and touch Mrs. Fletcher. He does a fabulous job of making it a situation where you could really experience that.
So your number 9 book.
My number 9, again, is a picture book. They're not all picture books, I will assure you. But my number 9 is called Mr. Peabody's Apples, and it's by Madonna. It's about a boy who learns a lesson about the destructive power of gossip. I have been reading this to my students since 2003. I even used it in my middle school ELA classes to teach the concept of theme. But what makes this book so fabulous is the lesson it teaches about gossiping. The story compares gossips to cutting a feather pillow in half on a windy day. The feathers fly far and wide. That is the gossip. Then to undo the gossip would have to put all the feathers back into the pillowcase. This is to make sure that folks understand the damage that gossip does, and it's a priceless lesson. It is one of my all-time favorites.
I haven't read that one, but gossip is a great. I think it's a great lesson to teach kids for sure. Adults probably need to learn that even more than kids.
Right. It is. I mean, it's a fabulous book. I even have a colleague that uses it in the beginning of his classroom to show kids about coming together and showing them about what gossip can do and how we really need to handle one another and what is said about one another. So he actually uses it as sort of a class bonding type of activity.
Great. So number 9 for me is Deliverance by James Dickey, which is a pretty famous book, and it's also a movie, but I read the book. And Deliverance takes place in the wilderness of North Georgia. 4 friends by the names of Lewis, Bobby, Drew, and Ed. And they decide to take a weekend canoe trip to escape their lives in the city and the boredom that they feel there. None of them have any experience canoeing, and their knowledge about the wilderness is pretty limited. Yet Bobby, Ed, and Drew go along with Lewis's suggestion that they make this trip. And Lewis is by far the alpha male that the others look up to. And Lewis's closest friend is Ed. He's a graphic designer. Ed's entering this midlife crisis, upset with how fast he's aged. He's in his late 40s, by the way. He has accompanied Lewis on similar trips in the past, minus the canoe. Despite that, they've never gone that far into the wilderness. And on this trip, Lewis wants to go deeper into the wilderness. So Ed's boredom and frustrations overcome his concerns about the trip. So he decides that he's going to go and bring along his bow to do some hunting, even though it's in the off season. So the 4 men, they start in the town of Ori, where people try to convince them not to take the trip. They, of course, do it anyway. If they don't take the trip, then the book would be pretty short. But at first, the canoeing is really easy. There's sections just with some rapid water, but they learn quickly how to use their paddles to maneuver the canoes. They camp alongside the river. Everything's great. The next morning, they paddle a bit farther and then decide to stop and rest. 2 men approach Ed and Bobby, one of them holding a shotgun. That's when things go from bad to worse. Deliverance is a story of man versus nature, but it's also a story of good versus evil. The writing is absolutely fantastic. If you like nature, Dickey does a great job of describing the nature that surrounds them. James Dickey made me feel like I was in the wilderness, on the river, and in the gorge where they were. And it's been many years since I've read the book, but I can still picture the setting, and I can still remember the anxiety I felt for the characters. Deliverance was on Time Magazine's list for the 100 best English language novels since 1923. So definitely, if you haven't read it, it's definitely worth reading. Okay, so number 8. Do you want to start? What's your number 8?
Sure. My number 8, and not all my books are children's or teen books, but this is a teen book, is Flipped by Wendelin Van Dranen. And the first time she saw him, she flipped. The first time he saw her, he ran. That was the 2nd grade, but not much has changed by the 7th. Julie says, my Bryce, still walking around with my first kiss. He says it's been 6 years of strategic avoidance and social discomfort. But in the 8th grade, everything turns upside down. Just as Bryce is thinking that there might be more to Julie than meets the eye, she is thinking that he's not quite all that he seemed. This is the first book that I actually book talked to my middle school students way back in 2000. Flip made me laugh, cry, and get angry. It was one of my first experiences with reading a book with multiple perspectives. The chapters alternate between two main characters, Bryce and Julie. Van Dranen takes the readers on a heartwarming journey of different points of view and how opinions can change throughout time.
Yeah, I like this book. I did read it. Denise, we were together when you first book talked that back in 2000.
That's right.
And I did read it, and I very much enjoyed it. There's a scene with the basket boys that made me laugh.
Oh, it's super funny. These boys are it's like a beauty contest kind of for boys. And the girls have to bid on them, and then they get to have lunch with them. And the moms make the lunches, and everybody's...
And the boys make the boys like dress up really nice.
And do their hair, and the boys are like, ugh. But it's very... It's really funny, and I remember when I book talked it to when we first moved here in 2009. I book talked it in like 2010. I asked my class, "Well, what do you think if we had a basketball competition here?" And the girls were like, "Yeah," and the boys were like, "No," and we all had a great laugh over it. But there's so many great facets to this book for discussion with a middle school student, and just life in general. There's a lot of, even though it's written for a middle school kid, there's a lot of really heartwarming life lessons to be learned as well.
It's a good introduction for kids as far as seeing different points of view.
Yes, absolutely.
Because it's told from alternating chapters, and it's told from the perspective of the boy and the perspective of the girl.
Right.
So. And
it's the same exact situation, but it's just how she sees it and how he sees it. A lot of middle school teachers use it to teach perspective. It really makes kids, especially middle school kids that are sometimes only see their own perspective. It's a really good moral lesson for them to see.
Great. Okay, so next book for me, number 8 for me, is Big Little Lies by Leanne Moriarty. And this is the story of 3 friends and mothers in a well-to-do Australian suburb, all of whom have children at the same preschool. One is the beautiful Celeste, who's married to a wealthy businessman. They have a quote-unquote perfect set of twins. One is the pushy and brash Madeline, who puts all of her time and effort into her children, but her teenage daughter is drifting in favor of her ex-husband. The third is Jane. She's a young single mother with a past. She doesn't quite fit in, but Madeline protects her and takes her under her wing. What Leanne Moriarty does so well, in my opinion, is to create believable characters. She shows you the mundane life of upper middle class mothers, but then peels back the layers one by one to show you the truth underneath the lies. This is a great book. If you haven't watched the HBO series, don't watch it. Read the book first. The book is far better, in my opinion, although the series was really good. It's witty, insightful, suspenseful, definitely worth reading.
This book is on my list as well, but it's a little later on, so I'll save my commentary for then.
Yeah, good idea. Okay, great. So what is your number 7?
So number 7 is, again, with a middle school book. It's called The Swap, and it's by Megan Scholl. With one random wish, Jack and Ellie are living life in each other's shoes. He's her, and she's him. Ellie assumed popular guys didn't worry about body image or being perfect or talking to girls, but acting like you're cool and everything is tougher than it looks. Jack thought girls had it easy, no fights with bullies, no demanding dads, no power plays, but facing mean girls at sleepovers, getting grilled about your period is way harder than taking a hit to the face at sports practice.
That's good.
Yeah. Swap, it made me laugh. Oh my gosh. The experiences that Jack and Ellie go through are very real and uncomfortably funny. I think sometimes I even found it funnier than my middle school kids because of being older and then be able to reflect back. And they're too much in it right now, though they do really enjoy it. The kids really liked it. Scholl does a fantastic job of characterization. She truly shows what a middle school student would think if their bodies were actually swapped.
Right. This is I did not read this one, but I'm familiar with the genre of body switching teens or kids, right? I mean, that's a common movie and common trope that was used in like the 80s.
Right.
And I guess made a comeback, but I'm sure I believe you that it's probably a cute book.
Right. I believe they made a either like I don't know if it was a TV series or a movie out of it as well. I think maybe Disney's may have done it. I haven't seen it, but I just think I've seen all those 80s movies and really liked them as a kid. And so I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to like this, but I really, really did. Schul does a great job of putting like a fresh spin on this type of on this type of genre or topic.
Right. Well, it definitely builds empathy. Like if you're a boy, you have that empathy for what girls go through, because I think there's definitely a different experience for girls in school than there is for boys, and vice versa. Anyway, I think that, by the way, I think that was a movie, Vice Versa.
Yeah, Vice Versa. I think
that was one of those.
That was one of those. Yes,
right.
Absolutely.
Okay, so number 7 for me is The Pact by Jodi Picoult. The Pact is about two families, the Harts and the Golds. The parents are best friends. They live next door to each other in a wealthy New Hampshire town. The kids, Chris Hart and Emily Gold, they grow up as best friends and eventually fall in love as teenagers. But all is not well with the kids. I'm not being a spoiler here because this happens in the first chapter, but Emily is killed and Chris is taken into police custody. From there, Jodi Picoult weaves a twisty tale of love and loss. The courtroom scenes are very, very well done in my opinion. The character development's excellent as usual with Jodi Picoult books. It was a page turner, but because I wanted to know what was going to happen next. I've enjoyed quite a few of Jodi Picoult's books, but this one in particular was my favorite of hers. Did you read The Pact?
I did not read The Pact, but I do love Jodi Picoult.
Okay. Yeah, The Pact's good. I think you probably like that.
Yes, this probably should be on my next to read list.
Okay. All right. So what's your number 6?
Yes. Number 6, okay, now we're into adult books. My number 6 is Defending Jacob by William Landay. Assistant District Attorney Andy Barber finds his marriage and the rest of his life falling apart as he tries to defend his 14-year-old son, who is accused of murdering a fellow student. The best thing about this book is that it keeps you guessing. I am one who can usually figure out the culprit very early on. I love how I was not sure until the very end. It is not a cozy mystery, though, I will assure you of that. Awfully shocking events happen throughout the entire book, but it really kept me hooked.
Yes, I read that. I read Defending Jacob too, and I very much like it. It almost made my list. Not quite, but it was very, very close. But I agree, it was a very good book, and I think that William Landay does a fantastic job with the court scenes, even better than what Jodi Picoult, I think, did in The Pact. I mean, I think he might have a law background. I'm not sure, but I wouldn't surprise me if he did, because the court scenes, they seem very realistic to me.
Absolutely, and just how the whole thing unfolds. I mean, unless you know the story, you will be shocked throughout the book. Absolutely.
Okay, so number 6 for me is Wreckage by Emily Bleaker. Wreckage is about Lillian and a fateful trip to the Fiji Islands that she takes with her mother-in-law, Margaret. So Lillian and her mother-in-law, Margaret, they fly to the Fiji Islands. They fly on this small private plane with Dave, who's the PR guy. Apparently, Margaret, the mother-in-law, won some sort of trip. So they go on this trip with the PR guy, and then there's a plane crash, and they wash up on a deserted island. The story then becomes a story of survival. So we got man versus nature, and then we also have man versus evil. So whatever you do, don't, and I'm not giving anything away by telling you what I just told you about the plane crash. That's happens like right away, and you would know that just by kind of glancing at the cover, to be honest with you. But I would if you're going to read this book, I would highly recommend that you not read the description. So don't go to the description page and read that at all, because they give away way too much in the description. So just buy the book, read it. It's a suspenseful page turner with a great ending. It's filled with drama and suspense and secrets, if that's what you like.
This one didn't quite make my list. I think it was my number 11. It's very good. I enjoyed it very much. I did not read the description, so that's a good thing. So I'm glad I didn't have the opportunity to figure it out, and enjoyed just letting the story unfold.
Right. By the way, one of the reasons why we read a lot of the same books is when I buy a book on Amazon, I put it on my Kindle, and then I put it on Denise's Kindle.
Which is, I think, Phil's second Kindle, I think he calls it.
No, I don't.
Oh, did you change it now?
I changed the name. It says
okay.
Denise's Kindle now.
Okay, sorry.
So number 5. What's your number 5?
My number 5, my number 5 is Rumors by this guy called Phil Williams.
Right. Can I say something about that real quick? So we had a discussion prior to this, and I said, and Denise is like, well, I want to use some of your books. Some of your books are in my top 10, so we put a cap on it. And he said, you can't have more than 2.
Right.
Which is unbelievably flattering that Denise does enjoy my books, which is fantastic.
I do. I'm not just saying that because I'm sitting here beside him.
And I think part of that, the reason why she likes the books is because we do have a similar outlook on things and a similar sense of humor. And then also when I'm writing a story, usually authors have one particular person that they're kind of writing the story for, and pretty much all the stories are mostly for Denise. So I think that's probably why you maybe enjoy them. So anyway.
Right, exactly. So Rumors by Phil Williams. It is about a high school ruled by small town politics, a rural community ruled by rumors. The truth may set them free, but are they ready for it? The residents of Westlake are resistant to change and afraid of confrontation. They're happy to punch in and punch out and complain about the boss man. They're friendly to your face, but spiteful behind your back. They have their farms and their football, but underneath that small town veneer, there's envy, self-hatred, and greed. Principal Janet Wilcox is a modern-day Machiavelli of small-town politics, playing the school board and the entire community like a banjo. Coach Rich Barnett finds himself squarely in her sights, and when an up-and-coming quarterback challenges her son's starting position. Gwen Townsend is the new teacher in town. She's a beautiful woman with a secret. She picked the wrong place to hide from her past. Caleb Miles is her star pupil, a brilliant young writer questioning his sexuality in a town lacking tolerance. Gwen needs to hide who she is. Caleb needs to hide who he is. In a town run on rumors, nobody's secret is safe. Yes, you could say that I am a bit biased here, but I really do love my husband's work. As he explained earlier, this story is wonderful. At times, I had to put it down because some of the plot points hit so close to home, reminding me of events that I'm desperately trying not to ruminate over. The characterization is fabulous, so real. This is actually a connection with Mr. Peabody's apples, demonstrating the damage of gossip and the lack of fact-checking causes. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I think that's a little bit of a theme of mine about truth and the damage gossip can do, whether it's a picture book or a book for adults. I think I'm a big fan of that theme.
And a lot of the misinformation is enhanced by envy, because a lot of these people that are spreading these gossip and lies are not happy with their own station in life. So they're happy to believe terrible things about these other people that are, in my opinion, much more successful in their life, much better people, much higher quality of a person. And so they have this envy and just greed. And the people that are in the book that are the quote unquote bad, they're not bad like serial killer bad. Right? They're bad like petty and just everyday people that you would see in your life. I mean, I think most people would read it and recognize the characters and say, I know somebody just like that. Right.
And there's one character in particular that takes that to, it's not, a serial killer, but does take it to the next level.
I heard Jordan Peterson say, actually, I was watching one of his videos this morning, and he said that you get narcissism when you have extroverted personalities that are not agreeable. Which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I could see that.
So Denise is an extrovert, but she's a very agreeable person.
Right.
So but if you were somebody that was a combative, disagreeable person and you were extroverted, that's like a narcissistic personality.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And I know as I've been getting older, and when you take that personality test, I've taken it a few times, and as I've been getting older, I actually fall right in the middle. I do have more of an extroverted personality, but I definitely need to be alone, and I think that helps me perhaps hopefully not have some of that narcissistic qualities that really discount others and others' perspectives and feelings.
Well, when we took the narcissistic personality test, I scored a little bit higher than Denise did, and Denise seems to never forget that.
No, I don't.
She brings that up every now and again.
I said, I actually scored pretty low on it. I was surprised.
You scored very low, and I didn't score high on it either, but I scored higher than Denise did. So
right, it still makes me laugh. So
I am more of, I guess you have to be a little bit of a narcissist to write books and think that people would actually want to read what you write, right? Yeah. It's not quite as narcissistic as maybe an actor or something, but I think you got to be somewhat narcissistic to think that somebody wants to read a bunch of crap that you write.
Right, exactly. But I think that there also, if you have some benevolence with it, then I don't think you're going to do anything that it's great to have confidence, but you need to have benevolence as well.
Sure. Okay. So number 5 for me is Dark Places by Jillian Flynn. And of the 3 Jillian Flynn books that I've read, Gone Girl, Sharp Objects, and Dark Places is my favorite of the 3. And Dark Places is about the Day family, specifically Libby Day. And she was 7 when her mother and 2 sisters were murdered in what was called the Satan sacrifice of Kanaki, Kansas. I'm probably mispronouncing that. So she survived and testified that her 15-year-old brother Ben was the killer. So the book takes place sort of back and forth in time. So it takes place 25 years later, and then it also kind of reverts back to the time leading up to the murders. So 25 years later, there's the Kill Club, which is this secret society obsessed with notorious crimes, and they find Libby and pump her for details. So they're hoping to discover and prove that Ben is innocent, and they want to free her brother Ben. Now Libby doesn't agree; she thinks Ben's guilty, but she's broke and desperate and agrees to work with the club to find out what happened. But the killer, of course, has other ideas. So this was a book that I devoured very quickly. The plot is excellent, and there's a very satisfying ending. It's a story that stayed with me long after I finished the novel. Denise, you read that book too, right?
Yes, it's actually number 4 on my list.
Okay, so you won't need to say anything.
So I don't need to say anything, but I agree.
Actually, so we're doing 4 now.
Yeah, so we can just start with 4. Okay. So Dark Places, again, by Jillian Flynn. At first, I have to be honest, I did not like the main character at all. I don't think you're supposed to, though, in the beginning.
Right.
Flynn does a great job of this, yet keeping you reading by weaving in character traits and plot points so that you want to keep reading. As the story unraveled, I was much more tolerant and empathetic towards the main character. This is another one that keeps you guessing until the end. There was a lot of things I wasn't sure about. There is a movie to this one as well, though of course the book is better. But Charlize Theron, I believe, plays the main character, Libby Day.
Although she looks nothing
like Libby Day. Libby Day is like not even 5 feet tall, and I think Charlize Theron is like 5'10" or something.
Yeah.
Right, and she has a much more curvy build. However, Charlize Theron does a great job of the characterization. She does a great job of Libby's personality. I thought that was very well done.
The acting was well done, but the book is far better than the movie, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's usually mostly the case.
Right. Yeah, it's a really good plot. Okay, so number 4 for me is Kiss the Girls by James Patterson. And Kiss the Girls is the second book in James Patterson's very famous Alex Cross series. I don't even know how many there are now. There must be like 50 of them. I mean, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of Alex Cross books. Oh, I'm sorry. I have a note right here that says, by the way, there are 27 books in the series. Okay, so I just answered my question. So there's 27 books in the series. I gave up a long time ago when he started using all the ghostwriters, but I very much enjoy Patterson's early work. And I think Kiss the Girls was a riveting, suspenseful page turner. And the premise, for probably the one person who doesn't know who Alex Cross is at this point, but Alex Cross is a DC homicide detective and also a psychologist. So in Kiss the Girls, his niece goes missing in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, where she's a student. And he goes on the hunt for a serial killer, or possibly serial killers, plural, that are abducting beautiful and successful women. If you're planning to read Kiss the Girls, if I were you, I would read book 1 in the series first, which is Along Came a Spider, which is also a very good book, but both of them are really good. So, any thoughts?
I liked it as well. I thought it was very well done, and there's been a lot of serial killer books and movies afterwards, but this was kind of one of the first ones where it really does take the serial killer premise to a different level. So I thought it was very entertaining on that, right? Though very disturbing as well.
Do you know what the first serial killer genre book was?
Was it? Oh, I think I do. It was Silence of the Lambs.
That's right.
Is that correct?
Yeah, Silence of the Lambs was the first, and obviously that was a very, very good one. But after Silence of the Lambs, of course, everybody started copying.
Yeah, then all hell broke loose.
Right.
There was any limits anymore.
Yeah, and now it's now the new fad is the girl in the whatever, girl in the train, the girl in the house, the girl gone, blah blah blah, the girl this and the girl that. If I ever write a girl something book, don't read it. I'm just telling you right now. Do not read it because I'm following some ridiculous trend. Okay. All right. So what's number 3? What's your number 3?
Speaking of girls, Gone Girl.
Gone Girl.
By Jillian Flynn. It is Nick and Amy Dunn's 5th wedding anniversary. Presents are being wrapped and reservations are being made when Nick's clever and beautiful wife disappears. Husband of the Year Nick isn't doing himself any favors with cringeworthy daydreams about the slope and shape of his wife's head. But passages from Amy's diary reveal the alpha girl perfectionist that could put anyone dangerously on edge. Under mounting pressure from the police and media, as well as Amy's fiercely doting parents, the town golden boy parades an endless secrets of lies, deceits, and inappropriate behavior. Nick is oddly evasive, and he definitely is bitter. But is he really the killer? Again, Flynn does a fabulous job of keeping you guessing and wanting more. The plot points are so twisted that even I was shocked as the events were revealed. Flynn has this way of making the reader feel comfortable with the character and then very uncomfortable, and then vice versa. You really think, oh, you're behind this character, and you're like, oh my gosh, no. And then you think, oh, I hate this character. Wait a minute, maybe this character's good.
Yeah, we read Gone Girl way before the movie.
Right, yeah, we did.
But yeah, it was a very, very good book. It almost made my list. It was very close.
Yeah.
Like,
it's not a cozy mystery. So for those of you who like that, be forewarned, it's very shocking.
Like, I think when I was making out my list, I think it was around 12 or 11. I mean, it was very close to making it. But yeah, I very much enjoyed Gone Girl too. So next, number 3 for me is Bleachers by John Grisham. Now, Bleachers is a very short book, especially for Grisham, who tends to write very long legal thrillers. But this book, Bleachers, it's not a legal thriller. By the way, my second favorite Grisham book is The Partner, followed by The Rainmaker. Both those books were very close to making it on my list too, but they didn't quite get there. But Bleachers, like I said, is very, very different than the typical legal thriller that Grisham usually writes. It's about a character by the name of Neely Crenshaw, who's a former high school All-American and the best quarterback ever to play for the legendary Messina Spartans. 15 years have gone by since those glory days, and Neely has come home to Messina to bury Coach Eddie Rake, the man who molded the Spartans into an unbeatable football dynasty. The story mostly takes place on the bleachers of Spartan Field, with Neely and his old teammates reminiscing of the good old days and the not-so-good old days. As they are waiting for Coach Rake to die, they're trying to decide whether they loved the man or hated him. For Neely Crenshaw, the stakes are much higher. Can he forgive his old coach and mentor? And more importantly, can he forgive himself? As someone who played football in high school and college, I'm a bit of a sucker for football stories, but this is an excellent story. Even if you know nothing about the sport, the characters are likable and believable, and the story is actually filled with a tremendous amount of suspense, which is trademark for Grisham.
I haven't read it, but I think that's going to make my Christmas read list for sure.
Okay, great. So number 2, we're getting almost to number 1 here. What's number 2?
Well, number 2, you actually mentioned it before, so I'm not going to necessarily give the synopsis of it, but it's Big Little Lies by Leanne Morty. That's number 2 on my list. Moriarty, sorry. Yeah. So this is another great read that makes the reader feel every emotion. The characterization is very real, and that you're sitting there right with the characters. The mystery is phenomenal. I did not figure it out until nearly the end. Moriarty has a true talent for plot twists, and I love it. It's funny, it's heartwarming, and again, I agree with Phil. The book is better than the movie. though I enjoyed not the movie, but the series, and I enjoyed that. And one difference that I thought was kind of interesting is it actually really the setting of the book takes place in Australia, but in the series it takes place in California. So it's a little different. They kind of Americanized it, but it was interesting. I thought that was interesting to have a little bit of an insight of Australian and a little bit of Australian culture and seaside. Right.
So of the three main characters, Celeste, Jane, or Madeline, which one did you like the most?
There was different parts of them that I like. The most memorable one is Madeline because she's such a spitfire and she just says stuff and she's really funny. Though sometimes you get frustrated with her and you're like, come on. And then the Jane, just, I don't want to give too much away, but what is, happened to her and what she has to do. I mean, you really admire her for her wisdom at such a young age and courage. And Celeste, anybody who's ever dealt with perfectionism and trying to deal with that, you can definitely relate to her. And there's parts where it really shows what of an intelligent person she is. And so it makes you like her even more.
Well, what she does a very good job of is creating characters that are likable, yet very flawed.
Yes. Oh, I would agree.
So sometimes you get characters that are so flawed that you just hate them.
Right.
It's just too much. You think that they're just not good people. Where in this book, she does a very good job of showing who they are, but at the same time showing their flaws, and your heart goes out to them. It's not like you pull for all of them, I think.
Right.
So anyway, number 2 for me is Descent by Tim Johnston. This is a story about the Cortlands. And the Cortlands, they go on vacation to the Rocky Mountains and this is right before their track star daughter is going to be going off to college. But when Caitlin, the daughter, and her younger brother Sean go out for an early morning run, only Sean returns. Tim Johnston, the author of Descent, he does an excellent job showing the loss felt by the family and the ensuing wreckage and obsessions caused by Caitlin's disappearance. You don't know what happened to Caitlin, and you're not sure if you ever will. The prose in the novel is, in my opinion, beautiful. Johnston makes you feel like you're in the Rockies. He makes you feel like it's your daughter that's gone. This is my all-time favorite thriller. I also enjoyed his other novel, which is The Current, which is a little bit newer. But I didn't like it quite as much as Descent. They're both definitely worth reading. And anyway, that's it. So definitely check out Descent.
That's another one I have to put on my Christmas read list.
Yes, very good. Shocking ending. But So number 1 for Denise.
All right. Number 1 is Initiation by Phil Williams. He said I was allowed to, and it really is my favorite. He will attest to it. I read it probably 3 times a year.
Really?
I keep going back to it. Yeah, it's just something that I just love how it makes me feel.
By the way, Denise is the type of person that will watch, like if she finds a movie that she likes, she'll watch it over and over and over again. Like I can't do that, but Denise will. And I make fun of her. She's like, how many times have you seen Titanic or...
Well, you like Gladiator. You watch Gladiator I don't know how many times.
Yeah, well, that's a good movie.
Well, okay, excuse me. And I think sometimes for me is I try not to numb, but it is a little bit of just like stress relieving. Phil and I work a lot of hours like a lot of other people do. And sometimes it's just nice to watch something and be entertained and not have to like worry about it or just take a mental break from overly thinking.
Yeah, and if it's a story you're familiar with, you don't really have to think too much. You just can enjoy it.
And you can just enjoy it,
right.
Yeah. And I think I feel that way about Initiation. Though there's a lot of things that happen to it that the first time you read it, it will pull at your heartstrings. So let me tell you a little bit about this. Carter Lynch was an outsider, an army brat, and he had what it took to be a football star. He was focused, talented, and violent. Carter didn't join the football team to make friends or win championships, though. He didn't care anything but taking the starting spot, earning a scholarship, and leaving, until he met Sarah and Ben. Ben was just desperate to fit in, desperate for the same starting spot, and desperate for the same girl. The uneasy friends were on a collision course that would change everything. Again, I may be biased because I love my husband and his work. However, this is truly my favorite book. I reread the book, as I said before, several times a year. I just love the way it makes me feel. Carter reminds me of Phil, and Sarah, the character of Sarah, is just wonderful. She's funny, she's smart, she stands up for what's right. I mean, I hope to grow up to be Sarah one day.
Well, she's a lot like you, I think. She's a lot like you.
She's probably, I think she's probably has a little bit more in the logical, but she's wonderful. The character of Carter has this incredible confidence and strength that has to come someplace deep within, knowing what, as you read the story, what he encounters with his family. Phil has such a talent for dialogue that it really nails it in the book. It makes me laugh. I forget how much I laugh and just love the dialogue in this book, especially in the beginning. How all the characters meet. I was reading it, what was it, maybe like a month ago, just to sort of reread it for this, and I just wanted to reread it again. And I was reading it in bed, and I was giggling, and I had to read Phil his, the dialogue out loud, and we both started laughing. And he just does a great job of capturing the characters.
The scene was right in the beginning where Carter just moved into the neighborhood, and
it's townhouses, so everything's pretty close together.
Yeah, and so Ben and his parents, and Ben's parents are like these really nice people, and they're kind of like the welcome wagon, and they sort of show up with and Ben is there reluctantly, and the mom starts kind of embarrassing him, and and so Ben is sort of saying something. It's kind of it says a lot about them in a short amount of time.
Right. And he's like, his mom is so nice. And he's like, Mom, stop. Mom, just stop, Mom.
He doesn't care about that, blah, blah, blah.
Right. He doesn't care about that, Mom, stop.
Yeah. And she says stuff like, oh, he's such a good little quarterback. And he's like, Mom, it's cornerback, not quarterback.
Right. Just like silly things. And she's so sweet.
But so believe it or not, that Initiation's it's probably one of I wouldn't say my least popular book, but it's, as far as book sales go, it's definitely in the bottom half for sure, for whatever that's worth.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm okay with the cheese standing alone on this one. I really like it. I don't want it to end. I kept wanting to say, write more. You should write like a second one to it. You should write a sequel to it. And I want to know what happens, more with Carter and Sarah to do. It's like watching my favorite movie over and over again every time I read this book. I just love the characters. I really there's just something about Carter and Sarah and some of the other characters, especially the two of them, that just I really can connect with, and just it is my all-time favorite.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome. It's the truth.
Okay, so number one for me is The Prince of Tides by Pat Conroy. Now, The Prince of Tides is a Southern drama about the destructive repercussions of keeping an unspeakable family secret. The main character, Tom Wingo, has lost his job, and he's on the verge of losing his marriage when he learns that his twin sister Savannah has attempted suicide again. At the behest of Savannah's psychiatrist, Dr. Susan Lowenstein, Tom reluctantly leaves his home in South Carolina to travel to New York City and aid in his sister's therapy. Tom becomes close to Dr. Susan Lowenstein, and he reveals to her the turbulent history of the Wingo family and exposes the truth behind the fateful day that changed their lives forever. Drawing richly from the author's own troubled upbringing, The Prince of Tides is a sweeping, powerful novel of unlocking the past to overcome the darkest of personal demons. It's Pat Conroy at his very best. For those of you that have seen the movie, which is very good in my opinion, the book is, of course, much better. I'm a big fan of Pat Conroy. The plot of The Prince of Tides is heartbreaking and powerful. The characters are real and memorable. The prose is beautiful. I'll give you an example. I'm going to read you a small piece of the beginning of the book, just to give you an example of the prose. There's something I want you to see, something that will help you sleep. Look over there, children, she said, pointing out toward the horizon to the east. It was growing dark on this long southern evening, and suddenly, at the exact point her finger had indicated, the moon lifted a forehead of stunning gold above the horizon, lifted straight out of filigreed, light-intoxicated clouds that lay on the skyline in attendant veils. Behind us, the sun was setting in a simultaneous congruent withdrawal, and the river turned to flame in a quiet duel of gold. The new gold of moon, astonishing and ascendant, the depleted gold of sunset extinguishing itself in the long westward slide. It was the old dance of days in the Carolina marshes, the breathtaking death of days before the eyes of children until the sun vanished, its final signature a ribbon of bullion strung across the tops of water oaks. The moon then rose quickly, rose like a bird from the water, from the trees, from the islands, and climbed straight up, gold, then yellow, then pale silver, silver bright, then something miraculous, immaculate, and beyond silver, a color native only to southern nights. So that's just a little piece of the beauty of the Pat Conroy prose. It's a shame. By the way, he died recently. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Yeah.
Which is really sad, but just absolutely just genius in my opinion. So is there anything else you wanted to add, Denise? Wait, you read Prince of Tides, yes or no?
No, I'm going to be like a kid here. I saw the movie and loved it. But again, that one I think you've told me, right before school was going to start to read it. And then I just got involved with my middle school in picture books, of course, like I normally do. But that is something that I really would love to read. I really enjoyed that passage. I love beautifully written work, and I love the movie. Thought it was very well done. But I would really like to read that as well. And I know you had recommended it to me a while ago.
Okay. Well, great. All right. So our next episode, we're going to try to do a top 10 nonfiction books. So thank you for listening. That's it for this episode. I hope you read and enjoy some of the novels we discussed. Thank you for listening to your next great novel. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Blueberry, or TuneIn.